Hey folks, this is real life engineer applying engineering principles into everyday applications. If you have ever wondered, should I use heat rod dehumidifier or canister dehumidifier? Or if after having a dehumidifier in my safe, should I still monitor the humidity of my safe? Then you came to the right place. Here's a short version of it. For every person that has a firearm cabinet or safe, have a hygrometer in the safe and monitor what humidity you have, you need to keep adding additional dehumidifiers until you've brought the relative humidity down to about 50%. Why 50%, you say? Let's take a look. A literature search will find irons start rusting above of 50%. National Rifle Association recommendation is at 50% humidity and 70 Fahrenheit. For the proper storage condition of the wood furniture, 50 to 55% humidity. Let's move on to talk about the scientific version. This introduces the psychrometric chart, not to be confused with psychometric. On the right-hand side, the absolute humidity ratio, right there. This is a ratio of the water contents as a grammage versus the kilogram of the dry air. This line on the bottom, for all intents and purposes, let's just say that that's the air temp. This line here represents the absolute zero humidity. That top curve right there is the 100% humidity. This is the famous 50% humidity where irons start to rust at, and that's the 80% humidity that steel start to rust at. So if you have an M1 Garand or wood component, you are basically blocked in at about 50%. Every time you open and shut that safe, you have basically re-zeroed or you reset the condition of the air inside your safe. Now let's talk about heat rod dehumidifiers. The way heat rod works, it introduces heat, and that heat is going to warm up the air inside the safe, which, because it got warmer, that heat will dissipate out of the safe. What happens eventually is you reach a new equilibrium temperature in the safe. How many watts your heat rod introduces, that determines how many degrees you can increase your air temperature in the safe. If this is the starting point of your safe, if your heat rod can increase the temperature by about 5 Celsius degrees, that'll bring you to this new condition. Simply by raising 5 Celsius degrees, you have now dropped from starting point of, let's say, 60% humidity down to 45% humidity inside the safe. In a separate video posted by Cameron on the Twin and Ben channel, by the way, that's an awesome channel, he made a review of the golden rod paired with what looks like a Liberty safe. He was able to elevate the safe temperature by about 5 Fahrenheit degrees to drop from 60% starting humidity down to 50% endpoint humidity. Now, Cameron's case, he paired what is a big rod to a big safe. That sounds weird, but we'll keep going. While there are different ways to pair between rods and safes, let's not worry about the irrelevant ones. Another thing to keep in mind, if you're like me, let's say you use a cabinet. Folks, in these cabinets, you have what is really sheet metal. I don't care what gauge. They did not put in any kind of insulation, and that's one thing you gotta be careful about. Heat rods just don't work quite as well in these non-insulated cabinets. In my cabinets, I've carpeted on almost all the panels with the exception of the front door. My heat rod was only able to increase my cabinet temperature by about 1 Fahrenheit degrees. I also saw from my hygrometer stat that I managed to drop the humidity by about 3 to 4 percentage points. So what does it all mean? We need to take a look on the psychrometric chart to understand where you might run into a moisture problem. This is the extent by which Cameron was able to increase the in-safe air temperature. And we simply take that distance and we graph it against the endpoints of 50% humidity, trace that into a new line. That's basically the starting humidity, above of which that heat rod by itself might not be sufficient. So in this zone, the garage, or if you keep in your basement, and then you also have this part which might represent a summer muggy weather, these are the conditions that one standalone heat rod might be insufficient. Now let's move on. Here's an overview of desiccant-based dehumidifier. This silica gel will keep absorbing moisture until that equilibrium has reached. As for the difference between the systems, it's usually on how they are recharged. On the bake type, generally speaking, we will recharge this somewhere between 200 to 300 Fahrenheit. When you're oven baking your silica gel, you are effectively bone drying your silica gel. It comes out of that oven really, really dry. And on the right side, when you plug this device into a wall outlet to recharge, moisture is driven out of that cartridge and into the surrounding room. For that reason, folks, you cannot keep this device perpetually plugged in inside the safe. It won't work that way, right? Imagine it's trying to absorb moisture, but the same moisture is driven out into the safe itself, right? It just doesn't work, okay? So don't do that. Now, the recharge temperature for these devices cannot be very high. Why? Well, you're inside a plastic cartridge container, which brings us to the comparison between the two. After the year-long average, most people, you buy one or the other, it costs you about the same price. But let's compare. For the bake type, these come out of the oven bone dry. And the plug-in type, they cannot really dry these at an extremely high temperature. So it comes out of that recharge cycle kind of dry. And let's take a look at for the same price what you're paying for. On the left-hand side, all you get is silica gel and the metal mesh housing. Look at the right. Besides silica gel, you are also paying for the electrical outlet, the heating coil, and between the two, you will need connection wiring, which means something is soldered in place and assembling. So it's a more complex implement. There will be more things to break. Another thing, plastic bristles with age. So if you're also paying for all this stuff, then on the right-hand side, yes, you are getting less silica gel, which brings us to the capacity between the two. If you get more silica gel on the right-hand side, you get more capacity for moisture absorption. What that means is for every recharge cycle, while the canister is in service, you can reduce much further the relative humidity in your safe. You will also have longer service life, the duration in between charges. Now, on the right-hand side, how much less silica gel are we getting? Well, let's take a look. On Hummidity's website, 750 grams of silica gel. On EvaDry's website, they don't actually tell us how many grams of silica gel they give us, but they did give an indication how many ounces of water it is able to absorb. Yeah, they got that wrong. They spelled it with a B. Listen, folks, if even the professionals do it, it's okay you and I do it, okay? The two words are equally interchangeable nowadays because so many people use the wrong one. Let's keep going. We back calculate to about almost 350 grams or 490 grams of silica gel, which is a far cry from the regular size Humidity, right? Just a bit over half of the weight. So, folks, I am not saying EvaDry is no good. I'm not saying they don't work. They will do their job. They will do what they're advertised to do. You just paying for the convenience here. You're paying for less silica gel. In return, you get that convenience. So you decide what you want and what's more important to you. Bottom line, does that mean I can just use a heat rod or stick a cartridge in a safe and call it a day? Well, not quite. See, none of us know how many of these devices you need until you yourself monitor the results in your safe. That is why earlier in the video, we talked about putting in the hygrometer, and you keep adding more dehumidifiers until you're able to reduce your safe down to 50% RH. Myth busting. I remember seeing this gun safe dealer's website. They claimed the peat dehumidifier works even better than the goldenrod dehumidifier. Now, the reality is peat runs 13 watts. Goldenrod runs anywhere between 12 to 38 watts depending on which model you bought. So given that most models from goldenrod actually have higher wattage than peat, I don't really understand how peat managed to make that claim, okay? Even on Pete's own website, they don't dare to say that. Actually, judging by their font size, they may have said that at one point in time, but they have taken that off. That said, this gun safe dealer, they're still behind. They didn't get the memo. They have the old claim on there, and that's no cool. Moving on, about the heat rot. This particular article appeared on a highly reputable firearms magazine. In fact, I'm a big fan of that magazine. Under Gun Safe Buying Guide, the author went on to say the expansion of the heated air pushes the moisture molecules out of the safe, leaving a more dry air inside. Now, folks, I don't mean to beat down people. I'm a big fan of the Pro 2A community, a big fan of this magazine, read the author's other work. I'm a big fan of his as well. But again, sometimes people get these details wrong. Even if the warm and expanded air pushes itself out of the safe, equal ratio of dry air and humidity will have escaped the safe so that the in-safe air maintains the same humidity ratio. This third example came from an independent review of the EvaDry. Now again, I'm only simply explaining the science behind it. I'm not here to bash EvaDry. Product works, it works great, you're buying the convenience, nothing wrong with that. Now, the reviewer stops shy at saying, hey, because this device reduced the humidity, therefore it works. In reality, that EvaDry cartridge was undersized for the situation. Yes, the device may have reduced the humidity by 11 percentage points, which is not bad, all right? However, the endpoint was 56% humidity. That humidity, folks, is a bit too wet. And again, the problem actually was not the device. The problem was the in-room starting humidity. That was too high. And friends, this is why I said earlier, you need to have a hygrometer in your safe. You need to keep adding additional dehumidifiers until you've dropped it down to 50% humidity. So folks, hopefully this helps you in your understanding of humidity control in your safe, as well as the need to continuously monitor the moisture content in your safe. Probably makes sense to monitor that throughout an entire year to make sure you've covered all the possible seasons in your locality. If you're interested in some of my other videos, I've provided a link here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.